down, you son of a bitch! Shoot me down! My name is Matthew Kroll.
Orderly, my name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Predator, Killer of Killers.
I did not hear that accent in the movie.
It was not. I took some liberties.
You took some liberties?
I took some liberties, but you know that line was in there to invoke that same feeling of St. Arnold of Schwarzenegger.
Do you think you should return to the Predator franchise?
No.
No?
Absolutely not.
There's always this thing about him returning to the Terminators and seeing what they can do with Terminators with them. He's never returned to the Predators.
He shouldn't.
He shouldn't? Well,
no.
not now.
No.
Now he's... Well, actually, the thing about it is, in Terminator, the reason that they've been trying to get him in is that the Terminator is ageless.
Yes.
So they've been always like, we've got to get him in before he gets too old. And then, with, Dark Fate? They brought him in, but as an aged Terminator. Spoilers for that movie. But in Predator, he could be him.
He could be him.
Yeah. He could be it's not Dutch? Is it Dutch?
It's Dutch.
Yeah. He could be Dutch. Dutch ages.
You think Dutch is still alive?
Yeah,
I don't know, man.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is still alive.
Yeah.
Dutch is still alive. I think it happened. Also, Danny Glover. Bring back Danny Glover, I say.
Yeah. You son of a bitch. Yeah. Dylan, what's the matter? CIA got you pushing too many pencils?
Is that Dutch? I always get that wrong between
Arnold is Dutch and Carl Weathers is Dylan.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Wait, but that's not Commando, right?
No.
Right?
This is Predator.
Okay. All right. I always get the two confused.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay. We are here to do another Predator film. It has been a year since we did our last Predator film, which was Predator Prey, which was excellent. Directed by Dan Trachtenberg. We've talked about Dan Trachtenberg on this episode. Also, like us, was a podcaster, so there is great hope ahead of us.
That's true. That's very true. Also, and what's interesting about what I loved about doing this movie and the Dan Trachtenberg Predator, basically it's going to be a trilogy because coming up is Badlands.
This is what I said last week. I was like, I got this confused because I felt like I saw, again, I don't watch the trailer, but I'll see a snippet of a trailer and be like, okay, I'll bank that. I know what that is now. And I was like, I swear I thought I saw a live action film that Dan Trachtenberg was doing. And then, Predator Killer of Killers was out and I was like, this is an animated thing? I am so behind on what is happening in the world right now. But it turns out I was not hallucinating because I felt like I was hallucinating because I felt like Hulu had gaslit me into believing that I hadn't seen the live action trailer for Predator Badlands. But there is a Predator Badlands trailer out there, which I haven't watched entirely, but I've seen little snippets of, which is a live action film where the central character is a predator.
But you know who the supporting character is or what the supporting charter is? I won't spoil it if you don't.
I don't.
Okay,
I know Elle Fanning is in the film.
Yes.
But I don't know. All I have seen, literally all I've seen is the shot of the predator, looking up into the sky and its mandibles.
And you realize it's a predator.
Yeah. And also noticing that the design of that particular predator has taken on some human features.
More human.
To make it more appealing as presumably the central character.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I think in all the different Predator movies, including the one we're going to talk about today, Killer of Killers, there's all different kinds of predators.
Yeah, like Utah, right?
Yeah. It's, man, what a fucking franchise. I think this is one of even the bad ones. I think it's just it's a one-note thing, but it's a cool one-note thing. I don't even know if I'm super pumped for the mythology of the Predator world or how they work. They're intergalactic game hunters and they fuck with planets and they're in the same universe as Alien. And I dig that. I just think it's cool. I wouldn't mind, I think in every one of the successful movies, again, including this one, spoiler alert for my opinion, but I think when they give you a little a tidbit about how predator culture works, but they don't outright say it. I want lore. I don't want an explanation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think it's notable that in the comic books there's quite a bit of predator lore and the Utah lore and all that sort of stuff is kind of being fleshed out in much more detail. You're correct, which is the movies have not done that. We also did. Was it The Predator with that was directed by Shane Black? We did that on the podcast a while back as well, which is not a great movie.
Not great.
But also it has one of the best thumbnails that you've ever done. Both of our skulls being held onto by a predator.
That's right.
Yeah, it was very good.
Yeah, the graphic is the best part of
the graphic is the best part of that movie. But The thing I like here is Dan Trachtenberg really kind of opening up this world and hopefully bringing it together in a sort of more coherent way. It does feel like we are building towards a sort of a universe, I guess, in some way, maybe akin to something like what Ridley Scott was trying to do with Prometheus. But so far, the other thing I was thinking about a lot when we were watching this movie, and we will talk about our emails and catch up on some housekeeping in a second. The thing I was thinking about was the phrase, the barrier to entry. And I feel like Predator has a low barrier to entry, or most of the films have a low barrier to entry in terms of like, yes, there's a shared mythology to this world. Yes, there is things that have happened in other films that are helpful to know. However, you do not need to know them.
At the end of the day, it's an alien that hunts you.
Yeah, and that's all you need
for sport.
That's all you need to know. And I'm not sure if this film, I guess this film does cover that.
Yeah.
But
because it shows each of them stalking these three characters, so you kind of just get it.
Yeah, but it's not like something that ever needs to be explained in detail. It's not like the Terminator, where it's like the machines became sentient and sent back this machine through time that, was trying to kill John Connor and his mother and all that sort of stuff.
No, aliens want to hunt things that are tough to hunt.
Yeah. So we will talk about Predator, Killer of Killers in some respect shortly.
In some respect, we got 45 minutes left to talk about it.
We can just say it's good, and that'll be it.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. But we got some emails that we want to go through. First of all, also check us out on YouTube and Instagram. Twitter, Blue Sky, or X Blue Sky.
Let's talk about that for a second. So we are in the process of uploading our entire podcast to YouTube. I don't know if you've seen this. If you're listening to this right now, even if you do listen on your RSS feed, it would be a great service if you went to youtube.com and you liked and subscribed and did the whole ring the bell thing on new episodes, just because that will help get us moving. Also, the thing that's been helping getting us moving is Shahir has been putting together wonderful shorts. So I don't know if you've seen those either through the Instagram feed or even on YouTube, but if you watch those, two things you can do, Topam Fam is small but mighty, is watch it all the way through till it loops and like it.
They're only 30 seconds long or a minute sometimes.
I cannot tell you on the back end of YouTube how helpful it is to get the coveted like 110% viewed.
Yeah.
It just catapults it. So if a small group of people, and it can like catch on if you just let it loop forever, because I know you're not paying attention. It's that like let it play for 5 seconds after the loop point is the sweet spot.
It's also fun making these because like we're pulling just like one quote essentially out of context and it's like sometimes it's like, oh, we really do sound like idiots, or
sure.
I've got to my wife really enjoyed this, by the way. There's a short on Sinners coming out where I talk about cunnilingus a lot, and it's like, and my wife, the first thing my wife said was like, my dad listens to this podcast, right?
Look for that on June 15th. I'm looking at the scheduler right now.
So they are filled with fun little tidbits like that.
It was fun trying to pick the thumbnail for that one. And so please.
It was just a thumb.
Yeah, right. Please check us out on YouTube and do all those things. It actually would greatly help us. Also, as we're about to read emails, you can email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. You could ask us all these questions. You could say, you could email us and say, no, I will not subscribe to you on YouTube.
What is YouTube?
Yeah.
How does it work?
Are the tubes in the room with us right now?
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much. Sorry, PSA over. But whenever we try to do something new, we want to let you all know what we're doing. Okay. Jose writes, first of all, huge congratulations on the 10-year anniversary. Thank you, Jose. I started listening after attending the great panel on the post-production of Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. Yes, that was great. Episode 76.
Wow.
Shahir was on that panel, and I've been following you all ever since then. Thank you for so many hours of thought-provoking conversations that always complement the movie-watching experience. And sometimes they're just as awesome to listen to on their own if I can't make it to the theater. Here's the next 10 years. Now, quick vent about Final Reckoning. Yes, I'm here for this. Yeah, let's go. Okay. I have been waiting for this movie for a while. I was not totally on board with Dead Reckoning, but for instance, the first scene with the submarine shooting itself or the chase scene in the airport felt genuinely threatening, and I thought there was potential for a good villain. So I gave the movie the benefit of the doubt until what basically it was the second half came out. Watching this one was an interesting experience. I went in opening day without reading anything, so not hyped by reviews, and sat down ready for an epic finale that the franchise and we deserved. But after just a few minutes, really few, I was wondering if there was something wrong with the movie or with me. Had I lost interest in the franchise or even the genre without realizing it? Or was this one just shockingly uninteresting? From the close body fights, shout out to Henry Cavill, to luck testing where we all sigh in relief, unlike jumping off a plane in the middle of the Arctic hopping in a submarine that's passing by, or procedure explanations before every mission, I feel like this one ruined pretty much every aspect that made Mission Impossible movies great. Anyway, Inari 2 does sound fun. I'll look forward to that one. Infinity War Overflow any day. Sorry, Shahir, though maybe the lemur would be able to steal Thanos' gauntlet. The lemur loves shiny things. See you around. Thank you, Jose.
I do think that lemur could have gotten Thanos' gauntlet, just the gems, quicker than Iron Man.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Listen, you are echoing a lot of what we experienced with Final Reckoning.
Can I posit a theory?
Sure.
My theory is, and this is interesting, Jose, you can go and check this. Tom Cruise has only directed one thing in his filmography, and it is a TV show from the early 90s. I believe Steven Soderbergh also directed an episode of that, or there's a few other directors on that. And it's the only directing credit that Tom Cruise has. Now, it is known that Tom Cruise has a heavy involvement in the producing of these films. He cultivates relationships with directors, particularly with directors who he can work with on a repeated time. Christopher McQuarrie is one of those people. So Christopher McQuarrie wrote, I think, one of the Jack Reacher films for him, and then directed, I think, the first Jack Reacher movie. Didn't direct the second one. Wrote Top Gun, then directed, I think, 4 Mission Impossible movies now for him as well. So Christopher McQuarrie is kind of in there permanently with Tom Cruise. They're attached at the hip. There's a great video where they're talking about the filmmaking mode of televisions together, which is a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
My posit theory here is that this film was, and this is a pure speculative hypothesis with no evidence to back it up whatsoever. Just a vibe check, just a feeling, just a thing. I wonder how much of this was actually more influenced by Tom Cruise as a director than the previous films. Because as you've noted, as we noted, as everyone kind of noted, and this is not a dig at Tom Cruise, the shift in, I won't say quality, but standard that we had expected from a Mission Impossible film was quite noticeable.
It's a story that's told badly.
Yeah,
it sucks because the movie itself.
And McQuarrie is a very good storyteller.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like anything else, especially the first half of the film, doesn't feel like anything else McQuarrie has directed. So who knows? I mean, that could very viably be that way.
It's all I'm suggesting there is not that there's any sort of insidious thing to it, but I just wondered if this, may have been Cruise kind of putting his hand in it a little bit more.
Or it could be that they just went out and shot a bunch of stuff and figured out the stuff after the fact, which seems like was kind of due to COVID and due to some other things like they kind of just did. So like maybe you just don't put it together. As
we always say, any movie is a miracle. Yeah. And a movie of this scale is like a rolling train, where people are just trying to put the tracks down as the train comes rolling past. That's just a quick hypothesis on that film, just because of the noticeable difference to other movies.
Of course. Well, listen, if you are sick of us talking about Mission Impossible, buckle up because we have one more email from Ross about Mission Impossible.
So Ross wrote us in last week. We kind of truncated that email to add this into this week. Ross writes, Tom Cruise, wow, what a ride these have been. MI7 was one that I missed due to having a child. Also, the first and only one I didn't see in the theaters. I won't go into too many details as this email was already too long, but I enjoyed both parts of the Reckoning duology. Wishing they just committed to calling it part 2, but who cares? The stunts are always jaw-dropping and really makes the theater experience well worth the ride. And worth the price of admission. I too could pick these apart, but that's no fun at all. Just enjoy the ride. It's
pretty fun.
Anyway, for fun, I'll now move on to my rankings of all 8 films as I've rewatched them all recently. Hey ho, unemployment in the entertainment industry right now.
Yeah.
Here we go. Starting at his highest ranked film is number 6, which would be Fallout. Mm-hmm. Number 1, the Brian De Palma film. Number 5, which I believe is Rogue Nation. Number 3, the J.J. Abrams film. Number 4 is Ghost Protocol. I'm trying to do this by memory, by the way. Number 8 is Final Reckoning. Number 7 is Dead Reckoning. And number 2 being Dead Last. I think that is a fairly consistent thing, which is number 2 is Dead Last. You had 7 higher. I had 3 higher.
I had 7 higher than 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
7, 8, 9.
7, 8, 9. Well, 7 did eat 9.
Yeah.
But
we're doing a short on that. It's the kind of link as the short about sinners. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
7, 8, 9. Ross goes on to say, now I would say that despite my order, I truly enjoy them almost all equally, depending on the mood of the whims. 2 has its values. Trashy romance novel, as I believe Matt has called it, is so spot on. And it is so 2000. When 3 first came out, it absolutely exploded JJ's career and I was obsessed. It is well worth being at the top of Shahir's list, or second. I can't remember if he rightly put 1 at the top. I do think that JJ ignited the modern MI era. I agree with that. Brad Bird continued this beautifully, adding his own stamp, and then McHugh honed it to perfection for 5 through 8. The only thing I miss slightly, despite appreciating McHugh Shuhan, is the individual director stamps on each film, and I think that is true. McHugh, I think, particularly in Fallout, which you've noted as your number 1, is a very strongly directed film. I guess I'll say it feels like it has all the hallmarks of a unique personality behind the wheel. 7 and 8, less so. Thank you, Ross. Appreciate those. Email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com if you want to tell us your Tom Cruise, your Mission Impossible rankings, dare I say, or even your Predator rankings.
Yeah, give us some Predator rankings. Yeah. That's what I want. It's
going to be 1 Prey, 2.
I'd say 1 Prey, Killer of Killers. 2.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. I really like this movie.
Yeah.
I'll read the Internet Movie Database about it because we always do that. IMDb says 3 of the fiercest warriors in human history become prey to the ultimate killer of killers. That is basically what happens.
It's also the title.
So the Predator franchise, ever since Prey, it finally, I think, found its footing of like, what is interesting about this? Throw them into all different time periods. Go, go, go.
Yeah.
And what I really appreciated about this movie is, and we'll get into some of the more technical aspects of it, but this felt to me like a dry run, like in a good way. This felt to me like a proof of concept for what the Predator franchise should be moving forward. And that is send Predators to different time periods and just make it interesting.
But now I feel like they've done 4 of the. Yeah,
they have, but that wouldn't stop them. Like you could do any one of these time periods. You could do feudal Japan. You could do Scandinavia in 800 AD. You could do Florida 1941, and then right into the war. Like you could do movies, all of these things, right? And it kind of, what I really liked about this, even though I do have some problems with it, this isn't just, pure praise singing. I love that it is an anthology of adventures, of basically big action set pieces. But then it comes together with 3 characters brought through time due to cryostasis or whatever, spoiler alert. And then there's a big sort of engaging thing at the end.
There's a kind of funny thing, which is that the limits of Predator technology is seemingly limitless, right? Like these guys are space travelers with almost every kind of weapon, plus masking technology, flying, yet they are also primitive hunter animal and have animalistic qualities. They're the perfect species, right?
Yeah, I don't think they're primitive. I think they are.
Well, they enjoy hunting.
Yeah, this is what I was going to say. Yeah. Like, I think their culture is based on this activity, and therefore every piece of technology would be based on this activity. It's for instance, Pokemon.
Yeah.
In Pokemon, because Pokemon are the most important thing, every piece of society is based around Pokemon.
Okay.
So in Predator society, everything is based on hunting.
You don't think they have politics, art, culture of any kind? Like they don't watch TV at all? They don't read books?
No.
How do you think the Predators, the Yucha, spread culture?
They don't. They extinguish culture. Actually, they don't extinguish culture. You know what's cool about Predators? Yeah. And I don't know much of the lore from the comics or anything like that.
Yeah.
This isn't they're not coming to invade Earth. That's what I like about this thing. They're just like, oh man, that Viking is fucking badass. I want to hunt her. Like, and then they look for a challenge and then they challenge themselves, and oftentimes in the movies they lose. But they're not coming here to dominate or take over or whatever. We are literally a game preserve, and it's a cool concept.
It's funny. This week, I actually watched The Most Dangerous Game for the first time forever. The Irving Purcell and Ernest B. Schottsack film from 1932 with Leslie Banks as the proverbial game hunter, who's like just, you know, like, so the famous story in The Most Dangerous Game is like, he has an island where he traps passing ships by moving his lighthouse around, and they crash onto the island. And then he, he seems civilized, but he's like, I'm a big time game hunter. And of course, the most dangerous game is humans. And he will, hunt the people that come onto the island. And the thing of the movie is the world's best hunter ends up on the island. So it is a game of cat and mouse. This is famously mentioned in Zodiac to some degree as well. And it's interesting because the movie is timely funnier than I remember thought it would be, because Leslie Banks is so obsessed with game hunting. He's just like, all he thinks about is game hunting and like how to hunt game. And the reason I found that amusing is like, that's what I think about the Predators.
That's what
they do. They have all this technology. They have so much they could be doing, and all they want to do is hunt. And also,
hunting to predators is like our phones to humans.
Yeah, they're just like on it all
the time.
And not only that, they're also they hunt in a way that is ridiculously overpowered. You know, like they
challenge themselves.
I think like they go to World War II with technology that is like, 2050. You know what I mean? Like they have invisibility ships that can like defy gravity, invert, like on a dime, have these like sky hooks and all that sort of stuff. I was like, these guys don't play fair.
But hold up. So this is what I like. We're jumping ahead to the World War II.
They're also enormously overpowered compared to humans.
Sure. But if you look at the way that they interact with who they are hunting, and this was true in Prey, this is actually true, I think, in most all the Predator things. They take their overpowered technology and match it to the time or the challenge that they are doing. So here with the Predator, the first one who fights the Vikings, he doesn't have a shoulder blaster. He doesn't have like any sort of thing like that. He has what is essentially a way better version of a kinetic shield punch thing. Like that's his thing, because he's fighting someone who is fighting with a similar implement.
I mean, his is much more technologically advanced.
Of course it is. Yeah. But they tried. This is what I like about it.
I'm being facetious. I know. Entirely.
But I like about the story building. We're talking about this like it's real people, like it's a real thing, and we respect what the Predator is. I just like the way the Predator stories are told, because it matches. Even in the World War II one, right? They're not shooting laser blasts at biplanes. They're using hook shots. They're using harpoons. They don't fucking have to do that. They're bringing themselves down to the level that they feel like they can. Yeah, which is still make it a challenge.
Which is still far higher than anything that we can throw at them. But I think to your point, and this, like, again, I am being facetious about it. I think it's I am amusing myself by thinking about the internal politics of how the Predators choose to, how to hunt, what periods to hunt, and how to choose what technology that they use at certain times, because they seem so infinitely overpowered in terms of their technology that it's amusing to me.
But that's, anyway. I think what I like about it, just as in a serious note about these, is even in the first Predator, he's using cloaking technology, but then he doesn't start like using like hyper crazy laser things until he's getting fucked up. Like he starts trying to do it like, no, I got this. Like he thinks he's got it, and then he doesn't, and then he's like, well.
And just from a storytelling point of view, they always have one fatal flaw, which is like the human character will always figure out like their sort of supreme weakness, which is often heat seeking, heat vision, that sort of thing as well. I very much enjoyed this film. The thing I was talking about earlier was barrier to entry. Because it is an animated film, because it dropped on Hulu fairly unceremoniously, in terms of like, I didn't even see an advert for this. It feels like there is a low barrier to entry to it. It's also structured in a way that is kind of 3 succinct short films. And what's great about those short films is the third one less so than the first 2. I thought the first 2 were just really well-contained short films. Now, Trachtenberg himself, the reason he came to fame was he did a short film based on the video game Portal. And it was, it was basically impressive that he managed to visualize the language of Portal as a short film, but he told a really succinct, sharp short film story through that, which was very noticeable. And, through each of these short films, the 3 short films and then the final set piece, they are very succinct, well-told stories that have thematic through lines. So in the first one, it is the value of vengeance, like do not avenge me versus avenging me. And what like the child that dies in the first film, spoilers for the first one, says, have you killed the monster? And, she says, the Viking character herself says at the beginning, when my father was killed, it's like a monster was created inside of me. And she, then has to destroy the monster. But in doing so, she destroys her family, which I think is just a really
solid,
succinct, short, sharp story.
And again, we're kind of jumping around, but her arc at the end of the thing really pays off with what has happened to her. Exactly.
It's really, really succinctly told. The second story, the two samurai brothers who are told by their father to fight each other. And there's a sort of poem or, like a soliloquy that one of them says at the beginning, which is that leaves grow on a tree together, but when they fall alone. And it is about the death of these two, one brother at the hand of or seemingly at the hand of another. But in fact, what they do is they fight together and he says, you are not alone.
Yeah.
And again, I really, like when I watched that, I was just so pleased with that in terms of like, this is the structure of this film as being these succinct short films is actually really effective because each of the short films is telling a complete story unto itself. The third one I liked a lot. And I think the set piece of it, like the sort of flying planes rivals Mission Impossible, which we just saw a week ago, except for the fact that Mission Impossible was live. This is animated, but it is very exciting to watch. There are moments in this that are like just dazzling.
I liked it because this harkened back a little bit more to like, to be perfectly honest, like Predator 2 vibes. And by that I say like, it's not about like a physical skill overpowering this monster. It's about pluckiness and smarts and mechanical know-how in a lot of different ways.
There was one, I think in this one takes the most, I guess, narrative leaps for you to kind of grab onto because he is so seemingly inventive. The lead character from this one is so seemingly inventive. Yeah, Torres is so seemingly inventive that it sort of somewhat belies belief a little bit. Like there are moments where he like figures out that the other predator has heat-seeking vision and he does it sort of like in a moment, like without much information going for it. These are minor qualms. It still really is effective as a story.
Intelligence is his dumb stat, baby.
Yeah, and
or not as dumb stat.
Not as dumb stat, yeah. And that is different to the first two films where you really get the sense that those two characters in the first two shorts have like lived and trained, and therefore when they come up against the predator, there's this sort of like memory that has been built up over time to deal with this situation, even though it is beyond the scope of what they're capable of. The third one, I think just kind of stretches belief a little bit in that respect. But
he also flies a biplane like through a city.
Yeah.
Like it does it. But again, if I'm believing that there's predators, I'm fine.
It is spectacular. It's just as a story, the first two, regardless of whether, like defying belief in terms of that there are aliens, what have you, they're tight. They're very well constructed narratives. This third one is just a little bit more of a fantastical thing.
And the battle world part when they all come together is neat, but I think was still my least favorite part of the movie.
What I liked about the battle world part, so when they eventually take these three characters and put them together,
because they all kill their respective predators.
Yeah, and they all end up on a predator planet.
Yep.
And they are told to fight to the death because the predators also have good Babel fish for humans and ancient Vikings and Japanese. Like they understand all the languages. They have a battle set up with a lead predator where you have to fight each other and then the winner will then fight the lead predator.
Mm-hmm.
And what we get through that, and I think it comes through the samurai character played by Louis Ozawa, is that he realized that they must work together in order to defeat the predator. And what I really liked about this is that you mentioned is that Ursa, the Viking, has a full, complete arc here when she sacrifices herself and she realizes there's not much for her to live for, but also that the memory of her son is worth preserving. And what she says at the very end, do not avenge me, is a really beautiful turn for that character. Whereas I really liked, I think it's Kinji, the samurai.
Yep.
I really loved his story, and I thought he was the character I gravitated towards the most. But I felt in the third sort of act, he was somewhat the less interesting.
Yeah, I mean, here's the difference. His arc, weirdly,
ended.
It already ended.
Yeah, it already ended.
Ursa's didn't.
Yeah.
And I guess
Torres is just kind of
there.
Well,
not just there, but he
continues to do the thing that he did in the third film, which is that he's just always inventing.
Yeah.
He's always able to kind of like figure out a plan.
Yeah.
And maybe that's his strength, and I'm not suggesting that's otherwise. It just whatever. There's a little detail here, which is that Louis Ozawa, who played Kinji, played a Yakuza in the Nimrod Attal film, The Predators.
Okay.
Where they drop where all the best killers were dropped on a planet.
Yeah, I actually very much like that movie.
I always wanted to see that because
I think I own it.
Yeah, I'll borrow that from you because I've always wanted to see that one. Because I like the concept. I hear it didn't execute well. I don't know Robert Rodriguez produced it.
It's fine, but like it's a really fun. We're kind of spoiling it now, but it's a fun reveal when you figure out what's going on because you think it's just like
the most dangerous
Predator,
yeah,
and it's not.
But at any rate, there's a possibility that since his Kinji and Torres flew off, Torres is played by Rick Gonzalez. Those two characters, they actually look like the actors look like them.
Yeah,
they could appear as live action iterations.
It's very much set up to do that.
It's possible, yeah. So,
I also think that in the tie is obviously nice, and we're getting into we're so past spoilers, but the post credits scene is
there's Amber Thur. What is the actress's name from Prey?
The main character,
yeah.
Prey.
She is one
also
of the
on ice,
cryogenically frozen, so she could appear again as well. What have you? So again, I guess as I've always sort of harped on. The kind of world building of this is somewhat less interesting, but but the distinction here between this and a Marvel movie or this and Mission Impossible and this and so many other things is there's such a low barrier to entry here. And in that respect, this exceeds all expectations and it is really fun to watch and it is really well executed. The other thing that I did this week, because you talked about us doing the John Wick film Ballerina, was I threw on John Wick 4. And
did you see John Wick 4?
I did not see John Wick. So I was watching it at home this week just to like kind of, I was like, okay, if we're going to watch Ballerina, I should catch up. I lasted 30 minutes in John Wick 4 and I was just like, I'm tapping out because the thing is the barrier to entry and that film seems so much higher and it doesn't meet expectations for me in terms of like, I find it boring to watch. And
if you don't care about the world, then why would you? Yeah.
But I sometimes wonder if they care about the world because there's just like the fight sequences are endlessly long.
I think John Wick does care about I'll even say the lore more than the story of the world. Again, that's fine. I think John Wick is akin to, and some of the movies do it better than others. 4 being the biggest spectacle, supposedly, and it kind of hits the, what's it called? The moment of, like Final Reckoning, where it's like, well, we got it. We're going to stop this. We're going to finish it. It's going to be the biggest thing we ever did.
Right. At any rate, I found myself tapping out of that film pretty quickly. And whereas with Predator Killer of Killers, I was like genuinely, it was like whiplash going from one to the other where with John Wick, I really had to tap out because I was just like, I just can't keep doing this. And then with Predator Killer of Killers, I was like, I'm really invested in this. And the more that this goes on, and it is just spectacle at some points, the more exciting it is at times, and it is really, really fun to watch. Well, the battle sequences are great. The animation is beautiful, sort of a mix of Arcane and Into the Spider-Verse and a few other things.
Well, let's talk about that real quick. So the co-director of this film is Joshua Wasung, who I was sort of looking up their past stuff. This is their directorial debut. They're a VFX guy.
Right.
But some of the stuff, and it's making total sense. Like if you just go to their IMDb, it's everything you've thought of. Like he's just worked on so much stuff, including Prey. But the thing that caught my eye, and I was wondering,
Madam Web.
Madam Web. They were also visualization creative supervisor for Mortal Kombat 1. Right. And the reason why that perked my ears up, not only because I love Mortal Kombat, but because the thing I love in the most in the modern Mortal Kombats is the story mode. And the story mode is basically like the type of fights, the energy, the creativity, all of that stuff that you see in Killer of Killers, like is in the story mode of Mortal Kombat's fight scenes.
Yeah.
And it really shows a knowledge of how to make an animated hand-to-hand battle engaging.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite part of playing these games, is because you basically go through them. There's a story beat. You see what is essentially like a kick-ass B-movie fight scene, and then it pulls to the side and you start playing the characters to finish the fight.
Right.
So the second I saw that, I was like, oh man, that makes total sense. And it's just, there's a language in Killer of Killers, and you notice it in that first, well, we'll call it a oneer, even though no film actually rolled on this thing. It was made in a computer, obviously.
Yeah.
But with Ursa going through and her Viking attack party going through and just wrecking this village.
Yeah.
It's incredibly interesting and impressive, and
it's dynamic in a way that you know, even when we talk about The Northman, the Robert Eggers film, it's sort of more dynamic than that, you know, like, and again, you know, animated films, again, it just, I think the thing is as well, and it feels like I'm sitting up a low bar because it's, what I talk about is the barrier to entry, but that bar is far exceeded in a way that many other films don't exceed, because it feels like the barrier to entry is higher in some films. And I have no way of quantifying that, but other to say this was just such a wonderful, like, oh, I'm just going to throw it. I didn't even know about this. I'm just going to throw it on. Here it is. And yes, it is setting up other worlds, but it is succinct and tells its like own unique stories.
Okay. This is a half-baked idea, but I think it sort of plays into what you're saying. I'm really big. I've sort of coined the term, I don't know if it's actually true, of buckets. And by that, I mean, like, even in content creation, when we make stuff, like in our extra history shorts, we have buckets. So like it's worst dads in history is a bucket. Best days in history is a bucket. Like small little pieces that you can put content in that people will understand instantly in the first 5 seconds what it is, so they can get on board. Right. I think Predator is a rare known IP that, because of the nature of what it is doing and has always done, people can, it is a story structure where people can get on board quickly, and you don't need that giant lore dump. I think the problem I think you're having with John Wick, other than just action fatigue and everything else, is it is so based on, like, it treats its lore, at least the way the story tells you the lore. You could argue, to your point, how much the creators care about the lore, but it makes everything feel like, well, if you didn't know that the high table needed these 12 cards to do the thing, and then the gel drops from the thing, it doesn't, whatever.
Yeah.
Then if you don't follow that and you're not invested, you feel like you've missed something. This is just Predator sees someone good at killing stuff. Well, they want to kill that person. Like, and you get it. And what my point is, there's very few, if we're talking about IP as sort of buckets, there's very few that keep its trajectory the same, but the bucket is contained enough where you can just tell interesting stories in that bucket that don't need any other setup. Does that make sense?
Well, you know, to the point, Ursa's story is really about the value of revenge.
Yeah.
Right? Like how much revenge can harm you. Kinji's story is the loss that one feels when one is forced to combat, you know, their brother, or to, you know, like when a partner falls alone, kind of thing, you know, like, and that is the story. And the other side of it is that, as we've kind of alluded to, and I was being facetious about, and I didn't intend to be quite so mean-spirited about it, is that one thing that you do get through the sense of the Predator stories, you do get it in The Most Dangerous Game as well, is that there is a genuine, despite the technological differences of the Predator to the human beings, there seems to be a genuine respect for when a Predator sees a human being that can best it, or that can outthink a problem. And kind of in a way that, like, you know, when a human being respects hunting elephants or tigers or something, you know, it's awful like that. But, you know, like, there's a genuine sort of like respect of, like, I must respect what this is, because if I don't, I will get killed. And so when they're going into these certain periods where, you know, like they're looking at a samurai warrior, you know, from that particular period, it is like, oh, I really respect the kind of skill that is required here. And this is why those first two shorts in particular really work, is that they are based on, I think even as filmmakers and, you know, watching this, they're based on lores and mythologies that deserve respect in terms of, like, this is what these people were able to do. And they trained for a very long period of time and they were immensely capable. The Torres story, as I say, is kind of reliant a little bit more on luck. And it's odd the sort of like, we talked about Edward Said and Orientalism and sort of like the Easternization of like the mythologies that are going on here. And like the Torres story couldn't be more American, which is that it is really based on like, it's just, I'm just kind of like winging it and making things up and kind of going through it, like.
Well, it's blind optimism.
And
that is what gets Torres through. The thing I like specifically about, and these are broken up, the shield, the sword, and the bullet. The Japanese one takes place in 1609. And then honestly, it takes place 20 years later because when they're kids, that's when it starts. But that's during the Edo period.
Yeah.
And that's basically the last period before militarization took over Japan. It's the end of the samurai sort of
it's
period.
The end of like the single combat kind of approach.
And it's so, I just like it because it's the perfect time period to tell this story because you have to assume that like the the predators aren't time traveling. They're just time is passing.
Yeah.
But like they saw it feels like they went to when the peak of a society's combat was.
Yeah.
So Scandinavia in 841 is like when the Vikings were their most badass.
Yeah.
Japan in 1629 is when the samurai were the most badass.
Yeah.
Honestly, World War II is when America was the most badass.
Yeah.
Like and then even it plays out, I think, even in the original The Predator, when in Vietnam, there were the most badass military people, dropped into, or was it Korea? I don't remember which war.
I believe it was Vietnam.
I believe it was Vietnam.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. I like that in the mythology of these creatures, to your point, they respect the hunt and they respect who they're hunting, even though they are brutal killers.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting place to like, you're rooting for the humans in this, of course, but also, if they lose, I'd be like, well, good game. I don't know. I will say this. Here's where I'll start pulling back some praise. I found like the Predator King with his cape of fucking spines.
Kind
of lame.
Oh, really?
I didn't like it. That felt. It felt like it took the one note to its natural extreme, but like I would also, if you're gonna have a predator talking, I want that predator to have personality. And this guy didn't. He was just the king or whatever. And I don't know. Predators have gotten by without verbalization or doing stuff like that or speaking terribly like a lot. Like my favorite part in The Predator is he keeps recording them and playing it back.
Yeah. It was very cool.
And like the second, like I think John Wick suffers from this. I think when you start doing something that's too long in the tooth, I think Lost suffered from this. When you have a cool thing that could mean like 9 different things, or it functions in this way. Oh my God, wait, it recorded him laughing. Why did it do like when you start being like, well, it's because it's tradition and this thing, and it loses some of the magic.
Like I said, barrier to entry on this is like you don't really need to understand too much, like.
I also think because this is wall-to-wall action, by the time we got to the big set piece at the end, when it was just like in a gray stone arena, like it's fine. I think I was done with it.
Yeah, it's again, the movie's only an hour and a half long as well.
Which no, listen, and that's great. It was a little weird that I felt like I was done with it. Yeah, even with that so short of a runtime. Again, it's not a slight. You should check out this movie. There's no question.
I think it's great. Yeah. I really was watching this with a sort of sense of like, because it's the thing about the short films, like, we did that Coen Brothers film, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, a while back, and it was like, oh, some of these short films are really interesting, everything, but like, are they succinct? How do we find meaning in the sort of connection of all of these stories put together back to back? We did Kinds of Kindness recently as well, the Yorgos Lanthimos film, and it was like, well, how do these stories connect to each other? The thing about this is that it's not as ambitious, like these are action set piece stories, but they have like a committed through line through them and they execute those stories really well. And then those stories come together at the end when the three battle. It's almost got it's got a really perfect structure. And it really works well in terms of, Dan Trachtenberg really seems to like understand the lane, like we've liked everything he's done so far from 10 Cloverfield Lane the Predator film. Everything he's done really demonstrates an understanding of what the lane is for each of these movies and how to expand on it. And they're all genre films. They're all generally IP films. But what I like here is that kind of like, I guess, James Gunn with Guardians of the Galaxy, Trachtenberg is kind of building out the world of the Predator universe. And it is not a high stakes world. It's not Ridley Scott doing Aliens, where they're like really trying to like tie the alien into the history of like human evolution, which is like this long, complicated idea with like many theories, and it doesn't work because those movies are too lofty and their barrier to entry is so high because they're like trying to explain so much. These are like really still doing something interesting in every episode, in every sort of iteration, but also kind of like sticking to the game plan here, which is that ultimately we should still be entertained by this. It's that thing we sort of talked about, elephant versus termite art. This is like a really good example of termite art. Like really just gnawing at the edges of like an existing thing and kind of happen to expand the world without like trying to be lofty about it. And that's what's great about it.
So the most important question I think that's going to come out of this podcast, I need to ask you, Shahir.
Yeah.
Now that we've seen this basically proof of concept of doing the Predator, but like in other time periods and just rolling, what is a place and or time that you think would be one of the coolest things for the next live action or animated Predator film to take place in? I have a few if you need a second, but I that's my like, especially working on a history show. I'm always like, how would a Predator thrown into the mix really make this work?
It's funny. There's a guy, there's an Indian rapper by the name of Hanuman Kine, who did his track called Big Dogs. And he just did a recent music video of this track called Run It Up, which featured Indian martial artists. And I would be interested in seeing something, and the cool thing there was like seeing something that we hadn't seen a lot of, even in Bollywood films, so it'd be interesting to see that world fleshed out. Because the other thing about what Trachtenberg is doing, and he did with Prey as well, is he's really like moving, it's sort of weird to say, but into minority cultures, or into cultures that aren't represented on American screens as in such a huge way. So, like we've got the Native American film, we've got Japanese samurai, we've got the Viking period, and then like ostensibly an immigrant in World War II as well.
I was thinking the time period that RRR takes place would be really fun, but also like the conquest of India time, like basically like when Britain started trying to run shit over there, like throw a Predator into the mix of like the different coronations that went wrong. Like you could do so much cool shit.
Yeah.
Also, I would love I would love one in London.
Yeah.
And either during roughly like 1723. Well, that was it's either during the Jack Shepherd, Jonathan Wild, thief taker general sort of like crime when the government was the crime lords.
Yeah.
I think that would be fun. But you could also do Jack the Ripper like in 1888 or whatever it was, because that would be really cool. Like
it'd be interesting to see a Predator. I mean, the Predator is essentially a serial killer, but imagine a Predator serial killer who's like,
I have the pitch. I have the pitch right here.
Yeah.
So if pretend for a moment that Jack the Ripper was a predator, but we know about predators that they like have an honor system. They respect this thing, but obviously the people who Jack the Ripper killed are not like the best of the best killers. Yeah. So this is basically a rogue serial killer predator that another predator has to hunt and stop because it's doing unsanctioned kills, unhonorable kills. Like, and then like to have like a detective or something. Fuck, throw Sherlock Holmes in it. I don't give a shit. Like
Sherlock Holmes and a predator team up.
Yeah, like to take down another predator, a rogue predator. I just made $200 million for Fox.
I mean, 20th Century Fox has a real, like, the thing is the Predator franchise, I think, is something that they've been trying to work on. They've had many iterations of it. And I think they're really finding a space for it now, because I also believe 20th Century Fox also owns Aliens. And there was, like the Aliens versus Predator thing was kind of goofy, right?
It's goofy. The first one's fine. The second one's rough.
Yeah. So I think they've found a groove here with this thing, in a way that maybe they weren't able to do with Aliens, and they had a really prestigious filmmaker behind what they were trying to do with Aliens.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that. And again, what I'm excited for about that is that the theme I've been talking about through this whole episode is low barrier to entry, really not building out the world in such a massive way, not answering any of the questions I was just talking about, like in terms of what are the politics of the
Don't want to know.
Don't want to know. I want to like have, like little semblances of that. It is like John Wick 1. where the world of the high table and stuff is this thing at the edges of the
distance.
Yeah, it's in the distant edges of the film, and you're like, oh, that's interesting, but I don't really need to know it to get to this.
Is there any historical time period in either Fiji or New Zealand that you think would be cool?
Oh, look, the colonial period of New Zealand with Maori warriors would be epic.
Yeah.
Like, because the thing about Maori warriors in that period is it was all land battles, and it was all forest battle, and the Maori were able to fend off Europeans with much superior gunpowder. And it was really based on intelligence and understanding of the land.
That movie should start where that battle's happening between the colonizers and the Maori, and then when they win, the predators are watching, and they're like, okay, we fight them now.
yeah, exactly. There's lots of opportunity. I guess the only issue here is that, again, I kind of feel like we've done 4 worlds. I love the idea that the main character of Badlands is a predator.
Yeah.
And
I'm a little worried.
Really?
Because here's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't care if the bucket is the same every time, as long as we're telling a different story in that bucket. If the whole thing is predator finds worthy prey, hunts that prey, violence ensues, but then the story of that person is the difference, right? Like, and that's the Viking story, the samurai story. Clear, and you have a thread for that human in that experience.
Yeah.
I'm cool if the bucket around that changing experience is the same every time. Trachtenberg has a track record. I trust him to do this.
Yeah.
But we are flipping the script of what Predator is seemingly.
And that's cool.
And it's taking a swing, and I always like swings.
Yeah.
But what I do respect about the Predator franchise is it is a safe bucket that manages to tell interesting stories.
Up until now, it has not been a safe bucket, in that every movie has genuinely been pretty bad, and the last 2 movies have been really good. And so,
but they played with the bucket with the original was. That's why, like my point's kind of this: Predator 1, excellent. Predator 2, fine, but kind of went out the gate. The Predator or Predators, whatever those 2 other ones, flipped the script too much, and it sort of fell off what was important. Then Prey came back and made it feel like it was important and in the right bucket again. This movie's here in the right bucket again. Now we're trying something different again, which again,
the thing that I rely upon here is the filmmaker.
Yeah, 1,000%. And that's why I feel safer in it. I'm just saying, like, my lizard brain's like, they're going to change it. Now it's not going to be as good, but who knows?
I'm totally fine with it.
I really am looking forward to checking out Badlands.
There was a tie-in in this film as well. Again, what I like is that this is a tie-in that nobody needs to know or care about, but the gun that they throw Torres, I believe, is the gun that they hand Danny Glover's character at the end of Predator 2.
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm sure at some point there will be a Predator Western which goes back to the origin.
Wild West. That'd be great.
Yeah. But we did have Cowboys versus Aliens.
That doesn't count. That's one of Jamie's favorite films.
Yeah. So I'm sure there'll be some way. But the thing I really want to stress this is, like, even though I've said this in this episode, like, Dutch could still be alive. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger's character can still be floating around. I don't care. I don't think
his story's over. Dutch's story's over. That's kind of what I was getting.
And doing the gun story, it's like, it's a cool little tidbit that, like, we know, and it's nice to kind of see it. Doesn't need, I don't need you to go back and explain it. I don't need you to explain how the Predators came to be. I don't need you to explain how Predators discovered space travel. I don't need any of that.
Yeah.
I really like these stories, the way they're being told. I like the idea that they've got in Predator Badlands, which maybe is trying to explain something. I don't know. But, I like the idea that Trachtenberg is at the helm of this.
I will say, without spoiling the thing in Badlands, I think the human character, the way that they are inserted, is very clever.
Okay.
So I like that.
Yeah.
Because when I first heard it, I was like, oh man. And then I was like, ooh. Anyway, this has been the only podcast about the film Predator, Killer of Killers. Shahir, when you are not hunting the most dangerous game in Astoria, where can folks find you?
You can find me chasing after my cat, trying to feed it, trying to look after it, trying to love it, at my website, www.suvanova.com. That's SUVANOVA. Matt, when you are using your enormous technological advantages to defeat your cat, Where can people find you?
That has never happened and it never will. But you can find me over at my website where my cat defeats me every day, youtube.com/extra credits and youtube.com/extra history. If you like historical stuff, we were just finishing up Mutiny on the Bounty. Mutiny on the Bounty 3 will be airing by the time this drops. So you can check out all 3 of those. It is a fascinating story. It actually, if you think you know the story of Mutiny on the Bounty, we deep dive into some stuff that like, almost like we were talking about like cultural, like the reasoning why things happen, right? And there's a certain lore to the story of Mutiny on the Bounty, but like it's often tied to like sex and violence and whatever, but it really is a lot about like colonialization and how the militarization in the Royal Navy changes the way that hierarchies of European men are seen, and then when they get to Tahiti, how there's a different hierarchy, and for the first time these men start seeing that like life could be different. It's really fascinating. There's a lot of facets to that, so please check that out.
Does Marlon Brando make an appearance?
He does not. But Charles does from Night of the Coconut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it was one of the final straws that Bly got into with Fletcher Christian was over coconuts being stolen, and so we draw Charles the Coconut just for funsies because I like doing things like that. Anyway, next week we just figured this out. What are we doing?
We have a schedule.
We have a schedule.
What's on the schedule? Tell me the schedule.
Well, the schedule. If I'm clicking over here. I believe the schedule for next week will be the materialist.
Oh, materialists.
Yeah, materialists.
Yeah.
The lists of materials.
Yeah. The new film from past life director Celine Song. Celine Song. What am I trying to say?
I don't know. But then we're also going to be doing, I don't know if the order exactly. We got 28 years later coming up. We're going to catch up on Sing Sing.
Yep.
And then we got some big blockbusters. We got Jurassic Park Rebirth, which who knows how that goes. Superman, which I am very, very excited to see. James Gunn's takes are always really good. At least in my opinion. And then, we just have more stuff rolling down as summer keeps sizzling by at the cinema.
I will be traveling. You are traveling at some point as well. So we're going to try and bank some episodes here and there. But fear not, we will continue this train and roll out the tracks as we move forward.
That's how it works.
And as I've said, I'm like, we're going to fall off the tracks right away.
But the true tracks that you can help lay down is by emailing us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, or you could even contact us on YouTube if you want to comment on one of those. Again, any engagement is always helpful. You could, people have been talking to us on Spotify, which has been lovely. Leave a comment there. Tell us, I know there's not a star system on Spotify, but you could type it. Like you could type how many stars.
1 star.
1 star. Yeah. 1 star would watch again. It's funny because you can only listen to us. Anyway, until we live in a material world, because we're material girls next week, please have a wonderful time and stay safe out there.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.